everybody. This is Brian Hogue. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Chiller Chat. Tonight, we'll be talking about vampires. Usually that conjures up images of Bela Lugosi or Christopher Lee, from Bram Stoker's novel, Dracula. They're the stuff of nightmares. Or are they? We're going to talk to somebody tonight. My guest is Leah Dawn Madden, and she's going to tell us why she's convinced that vampires do exist. So let's get Leah on the phone and hear what she has to say. All right. Now this is going to be a really interesting show, and if you have any comments and you'd like to join in, I encourage you to go to the YouTube channel where we can do this live. Okay, I'll call her up right now.
Hello.
Hello, Leah. This is Brian. You're on Chiller Chat.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you tonight?
Better than what I have been. I'm doing really good.
Oh, little under the weather, are you?
A little bit. So my voice might be a little froggy, so I apologize.
Oh, no need to do that. I just appreciate you being on the show. So I'll put your picture up here and let the folks know that who we're talking to here. Leah, you were kind enough to agree to be on the show tonight. Now, we're going to be talking about something very interesting, and I think a lot of the viewers have quite a bit of an interest in, and that is vampires.
Yes.
Now, you believe that vampires do exist, and I find that fascinating. Now, before I guess we get into the heart and soul of tonight's topic, as far as their existence, what got you into studying vampires to begin with?
It started at a very young age. My fear for vampires. And I guess to get over that fear, my father and I used to watch Halloween programs. It was a big deal. It was like our tradition. Every Halloween we would watch, horror movies or what have you, and finally when I was around 13, I decided, I'm going to, start studying and understanding vampires. And there was a documentary that was on TV. It might have been on PBS at the time. And I was absolutely enthralled with it. And from that point on, anything and everything I could get my hands on, I began studying on vampires, the folklore, the different types, the different aspects, and, how to prevent, how to stop, how to protect, all those kind of things. So it's been about 38 years that I've been studying vampires, vampiric lore. So I guess I feel that I'm a self-made vampirologist.
Okay, so your interest in them started out in the movies, like with the fictitious vampires, and then through your studies you started to think that the more you found out that you started to think maybe they were real. Is that how that worked?
I've always felt that they were real, even as a young child, even like in the movies, and that's one of the reasons why I was so fearful as a young child, and even as I got into my teens, the whole aspect, and that's what made me want and desire to, learn more about it. So I've never seen it as fictitious. I find that most of your fictitious mythological creatures have some basis of truth. Mm-hmm. And I've always believed that from a very, very young age.
Okay. Well, that was one of my questions. Was I was going to ask you how long you've been doing this, you've been pursuing this, but it sounds like all your life, pretty much.
For the most part, yes. Like I said, about 38 years I've been studying whatever I could. I mean, I have a lot of different books, a lot of different movies and so forth. There's a few of my, favorite vampire movies that I'll watch over and over again, of course. But it's also, like I said, just a great interest of mine. I always delved into what was the unknown in the cryptozoological world, and for that I can thank my mother, because she was a very well-renowned reader. She was very open-minded, and she, basically was like, "What do you want to read about?" So she encouraged a lot.
Now, I'm curious, what is what is a vampire? What's your definition of a vampire? And I know that there are several types that you'll probably mention.
A vampire, it just depends on what, like you said, there's many different types. A vampire, most people think of, the main vampire as Dracula, as the bloodsucker, which is a sanguine type of vampire who needs to sustain its life force or its energy by drinking the blood of others. Then you have the other types of vampires, which is, a lot of people encounter like your psychic vampires. You have your psychic vampires that basically take your energy. You have dreamscape ones that come in and out of your dreams. There's different types of vampires. And even through vampiric lore, you'll find throughout many different cultures and countries, they each have their own aspects of what a vampire is.
Now, the one that I'm mostly curious about would be the ones that drink blood. I guess the ones that are probably the stereotypical image that we think of, like Dracula and those type of vampires there. Now, what would that be? I mean, is that what you're referring to? Something like that? I mean, is this an undead creature? Is this a demon? What would this be?
Well, you have your undead. You have the undead, which it has been documented back to Babylonian. Also, there are some aspects which I'm still trying to research and find, but on Atlantean folklore, or from, of course, the Atlantean folklore that we know of, that they even went back as far as Atlantean time period. So there are ancients, there are the undead, there are the kind that walk among us that are normal, human, but they just have a longer life aspect. It just depends on what type of vampire it is.
Okay. Now, what would their characteristics be if the ones that we're talking about right now? Or, I mean, what kind of abilities or powers would they have, if any?
Depending. I mean, everything that I have studied, they have more of a superhuman power. They have the power of suggestion. They have the power of telepathic. They can come and go as they please, and meaning they can vanish and reappear. They can cloak themselves. They have greater strength than humans do. Things like that. A lot of times you'll find that they have hypnotic eyes. Their eye coloring might be a little bit different. They're very pale. They just have a different look about them. I can't even explain because of what I see and how I experience things. Being a psychic medium and a sensitive spiritualist, what have you, their aura is completely different.
Now, what would their aura look like compared to a normal human? What would you sense or feel or see with them as opposed to a person?
Their aura is very dark, very depleted. It's just like their energy is just totally different in how it feels. And it's a recognition. The few encounters that I have had, it's just a recognition between like myself and that particular vampire. We recognize each other. I can't even explain it. It's just a recognition. You just automatically know that they're not human.
And you've recognized these vampires, and they've recognized you. You're saying, have they ever approached you or made any attempt to contact you or acknowledge you in any way?
They're usually very fearful of me. They usually try to get away from me as soon as possible, possibly because I can see them for what they are. And they try to cloak themselves as much as they can. I have had an encounter where telepathically it was like, you're in my space, you're invading my territory. What are you? Who are you? That kind of a thing. But for the most part, as soon as they recognize myself, as soon as they recognize what I am and I recognize them, it's usually they're not around too much longer after that.
Well, in what kind of settings are you have you run into one? And when you do, are they by themselves or are they with a group of their own?
Um, the one case that I had run into someone was back in the 90s. I was at a college, community college, and it was at an evening class. And as soon as I walked in, he was at the back of the classroom, and I immediately knew. And he looked at me, and it was like the energy in the room was like between him and I was really strong. He only lasted like maybe another class after that, and he never appeared again. Like he never showed up. But I knew instantly that he was a vampire. I had no doubt within my mind.
Huh.
And later on, a few years ago, actually, I was with Brian and Terry Seach, and we were at Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and they were having a masquerade party type thing at the theater. And a gentleman came walking out, and he had on the typical, of course, vampire garb, the mini cloak and what have you, cape and what have you, and he spun around and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and he took a step back, and he ran, like he was gone. And Brian looked at me, he said, "Was that I was like, "Yes, that was a vampire."
Now, what do you suppose their fear stems from? Do they think they're going? I mean, what would you do? I mean, do they feel like they're being hunted? Do they feel like they're going to be hunted, or what do you suppose? What do you suppose their concern is?
See, that's something that I've never really I have yet to figure out what they actually see when they see me. I know that I have physically died. I'm considered what the Native Americans would call a revenant. So I have crossed over. So I'm in between worlds, and I don't know if it's because of that or if it's because I'm a hereditary witch. I haven't figured out exactly what they see. I just know that they're very fearful.
Well, when you say you crossed over, were you in an accident or something caused you to leave your body, an out-of-body experience, or what do you mean by that?
When I was 2, I was clinically pronounced dead.
Oh.
To this day, I can remember it as if it was yesterday. My sugar count was 19. And I was, like I said, I was clinically pronounced dead. Since then, I've had several other near-death experiences. One, only a few years ago, I hadn't felt good, and I know that I had died. I know that I crossed over. I saw family members, and only decided to come back because of my son.
So you believe that this, and you being a psychic medium, this is something that sends a flag to them that, you're different. They see you different than everybody else.
Correct.
Now, I guess that leads me to another question. I was wondering, what would they be afraid of? But then that leads me to think, well, are their vulnerabilities the same as what we would imagine in the movies, like the a cross, for example, or a holy image? Would that be something that they would be concerned about, or is that just something from the movies?
Oh, no, that is something true. I mean, yes, Hollywoodify things and make things more dramatic, but those things do work. Your holy water, your crosses, any religious symbol. It could be an ankh, it could be a Star of David, anything that you believe in, profoundly in a religious sense. You can ward off a vampire. There's different other things like the garlic. That's true. You have to welcome them into your home. They can't just come into your home or your house. You have to invite them in. So all those things are true to fact.
What about sunlight? Is that just something from the movies, or?
See, that sometimes, depending on the older the vampire, the more they are more capable of being in sunlight. Others, perhaps, they can't be in sunlight. I mean, there's different health issues as well that occurs with people that aren't able to be in sunlight. But if we're talking an actual vampire, as we're speaking about, I think it just depends. Some of them are able to go, through daylight. They just don't have the degree of energy that they would at nighttime.
Okay. Now Samantha on YouTube is asking, and I'm sorry, Samantha, because I'm not sure, this might be a delayed question, but why would this frighten a vampire? Please forgive me, I'm not being negative. Just wondering why a vampire who has strengths beyond a human, why would they be afraid of a human? But then I think you said that you're not real clear on that yourself. Is that correct, Leah?
That's correct. Okay. Like I said, I'm considered more of a revenant because I have crossed over more than once. I do, with the spirit communication that I do, being a psychic medium, I've always walked with one foot in one world in the spirit realm and one foot in the physical realm. Mm-hmm. So maybe it's because I can see beyond the scope.
Okay. It almost sounds like, I guess we talk about this quite a bit with, with Bigfoots and UFOs, and, this, it almost sounds like an interdimensional characteristic of being able to materialize and be able to leave the room and through the walls and so forth, or just show up somewhere.
Correct.
Has that ever crossed your mind on something like that?
Yes. I mean, they can. I mean, there's certain ones. When you talk the interdimensional vampires, those are the ones who can enter through astral projection, through your dreams and what have you, where a person may dream, may not be able to wake up right away. When they do, they feel very fatigued and feeling drained. And a lot of times, that's a symptom of perhaps you've been drained by, interdimensional vampiric type creature. They also talk about the incubus and the succubus. That's another form of vampiric creature that basically sucks the life force, the sexual energy of that person.
Okay. Now, what about the ones who actually drink blood from the living? I mean, is that something to where they would actually have fangs like what we know in the movies? Do you know, or have you ever run across anything like that, or through your studies?
That I haven't, but some of the older folklore, yes, they do have fangs. If I can go back to the way we represent, or the way we see Dracula is because of Bela Lugosi. He created what we believe Dracula should look like. Other folklores, he was a hideous, grotesque being, more like a Nosferatu type being.
Right.
But Bela Lugosi created what we see vampires as of today, when it first came on screen. And so that's what most people basically, when they think of, a vampire. Yes, there's been other actors that have played, Dracula and what have you, but it was Bela Lugosi that actually created that format.
Yeah.
Of, something that was, a being that was very suave and very, able to mesmerize.
Yeah, because even in the in Bram Stoker's novel, I mean, it wasn't a charming looking debonair figure at first, right?
Correct.
Yeah, he sort of morphed into that as he gained his powers and his energy, I guess, yes, throughout the story. And it's interesting that Bela Lugosi never had fangs. We never saw that. We saw that later with Christopher Lee, but yeah. But I was just curious. I mean, we hear of the energy being drained and stuff like that, or a psychic vampire. But I was just always curious about what about these other ones that are claimed to drink blood. How do they do that? Or maybe they just cut the person open or something. I mean.
And sometimes, I mean, in certain cultures, or even like the underground vampire covens, what have you, they do. I mean, some of them have fangs. Some of them do just do the bloodletting of cutting. It just depends. But you have to remember that through all cultures, blood is the magic of life. So without the flow of blood coursing through our bodies, there would be no life. So it's that need of mortality, and also it's a symbol of immortality.
Now, from what you've studied and from what you know, does a human being have the ability to be turned into one of these things? That might not be a real clear-cut answer, huh?
No, it's not. It really isn't.
Yeah.
Depending, I would have to say that, I mean, yes, Hollywood does, have a tendency to make things more, as they are. But I would say yes, that there is a small window, let's say, that a human can be turned, depending on what kind of vampire it is.
Okay.
If we're going with folklore.
Now, you mentioned something about them being in a coven a little bit, just about a minute ago or so. Is that something like the Anne Rice novels or something? Didn't she have? I've not read them. I've seen a couple of those movies, but it's so long ago. I'm probably gonna chop it up here trying to tell you what I remember. But didn't they have like clusters of vampires living together, or covens and stuff like that?
Yes, different houses. Yes. They have different houses, different levels. They have the lower class, the medium. It's just like they have a hierarchy.
What do you suppose their purpose would be? I mean, if they're here living among humans, I mean, has your studies told you, like, what do they have an agenda, or they just happen to be here and they just want to keep that to themselves?
More or less, they kind of keep to themselves. They try to maintain a sense of secrecy amongst themselves. They try not to, it's not like, oh, hey, here I am type of, they try to maintain some form of secrecy. And a lot of times, if you look at some of the missing persons, especially homeless people, what have you, where do they actually go? What actually happens? They may feed on them. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So it just depends. I feel that they try to keep more of a quietness about who they are and where they are.
Now, Samantha on YouTube, she asked, do you think someone would have to be a vampire-sensitive person who could be changed, or would that kind of person be more apt to scare a vampire away? Like, I guess like yourself. I mean, is that something? Do you if I'm understanding the question right? I'll repeat it. Do you think someone would have to be a vampire-sensitive person who could be changed, or would that kind of person be more apt to scare a vampire away?
I would say they'd be more apt to scare a vampire away.
Okay. Huh. That's interesting. Now, is there anything about where the legend comes from about them sleeping in their own earth? They have to return to their coffin at night.
Correct. It's a piece of where they're from. It keeps them safe. It keeps them grounded to who they are and what they are.
Mm-hmm. And some of these vampires can live up to what, hundreds of years old, or
yes, or even perhaps even older. And that goes back to, I mean, if you look at one of the first known vampires that was ever known was Lilith.
Right, from the Adam and Eve, right?
Correct.
Okay.
She was supposedly the first wife of Adam.
Right. Okay. Now, yeah, and wasn't that from a curse from God or something along that line? I'm trying to remember. I don't know that off the top of my head, but it's something that wasn't she cursed by God?
It all became. It's in several ancient texts, and it's basically in the Jewish Talmud. That Lilith was described as being Adam's first wife. They were equal. They were considered equals, and Adam didn't want her to be equal to him. And Lilith refused to be subservient, which caused many arguments. And in a rage, she left Adam from the Garden of Eden. Several times, angels tried to bring her back, and from there, just like a scorned woman, more or less, she just became what became known as the night demon or the night hag or the screech owl. So in a certain way, yes, she was cursed by God, but at the same time, it was her own doing.
Her free will.
Yes, it was her free will, because she refused to be subservient to man. She felt that she was his equal.
She wasn't going to be on bottom.
Correct.
Yeah. Now, Samantha asks another question. Samantha plays our vampire Elle on Chiller Night Theater, so she has a obviously an interest in vampires. So I know she wanted to watch this episode tonight and interact. But she wrote, "Do vampires retain their humanity, or when they are changed, do they lose this?"
It all depends on the vampire. It all depends on who the person was before they become a vampire. I feel that in certain instances, there are some, especially more of the younger set, that might be only a few hundred years old and still maintain some of their humanity, whereas you get older, you lose that humanity.
Well, now, are you speaking anywhere else on this anytime coming up soon, or I mean, you've talked at different conventions and stuff before, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Do you have anything coming up in the near future?
Not that I know of, unless something out of the blue happens. I am working the presentation that I gave at the Butler Conference this past spring in April.
Yes.
I am working on finishing up my book, so I'm hoping to have it done by our next conference in April of 2019, so that I can have it out by then.
Okay. I remember going to that, and I met you there, and I knew at that point I wanted to have you on the show, because I find I can't wrap my, quite bluntly, I can't wrap my mind around the concept that, there could actually be a vampire, but I find the idea very, very interesting. And I think if we keep open minds, that there are other things out there that we don't know about, or we just don't understand. There's a term, the universe is under no obligation to make sense to us.
Correct.
And if we can keep that in mind and keep an open mind, there may be far more things out there than we can even begin to imagine. Well, Leah, I told you that this time would fly by, and believe it or not, we're at the bottom of the hour already. So,
okay.
Let me ask you though, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what would be a way for them to contact you? Do you have a website or email that we can put up?
I'm trying to think. I have my Gmail. It's Leah Dawn Madden at gmail.com.
Okay.
And I'm also on Facebook under Aurora Paranormal Services.
Okay.
Which I'm currently working on. It's there. I'm going to be revamping it and what have you. But I'll be working on it some more. But they can get in touch with me through Messenger under Aurora Swanhild.
Okay.
And that would be Aurora, Aurora Swanhild.
Okay. And I'll make sure that's on the screen too.
Okay. SWANHILDE.
Okay. All right, great. Well, Leah, it was a pleasure to talk to you. It was a fascinating subject. I was very interested in having you on the show. I love vampires, so thank you for coming on the show, and I appreciate you coming on when I knew you were a little under the weather tonight, but you still came on, and I do appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much. I truly enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you very much, and you have a good night. We'll take care.
You too.
All right, bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And folks, I will. I'll have that information on the screen, and if you want to get in touch with her, make sure that you do. I'm sure she has a lot of interesting information about vampires that we didn't even touch on tonight. So We want to thank Leah for coming on the show tonight. We want to thank you for joining us once again for Chiller Chat. And have a good night. Have a good chiller night. We'll see you next week. Thanks.
How many times do I have to tell you, just because something isn't good doesn't mean it's bad?
Oh, jeez.